Hey, today we're doing a workshop tour. Come on, let's go see what's inside. So this is the view I see every morning when I get to the workshop, and we're gonna go experience it. So it's gonna be fun. Let's go. So the first thing here is that I have an office, and I am so blessed by this space. This is my office here, and it's the first thing that I always get to before I actually get into the workshop, which is through that door back there. So, it's a number of things. I got several boxes on the wall that I had made years ago. There's a shelf that I had made. This is an important part of my office right here, believe it or not, the hideaway bed, because I do end up spending nights here sometimes. Our residence is actually about 20 minutes away. My work habits are such that I sometimes will stay up to midnight and work, and I want to get working in the morning. This is a shelf that I made years ago, and so that is where books and magazines and all that stuff gets stored. It's also the backdrop for a lot of my videos. That there is a chair and a table that I made. You can see the new addition to the workshop there, lighting for the videos that I'm doing. And there's my video editing spot. So anyways, the office, important part of my life, always has been. Bookwork has to happen. Emails have to be done. Those things need to take place. At this point, I was also video editing and responses to videos and all that kind of stuff that needs to happen. So that is where I do that. I have recently, you can see that there are on the bottom 2 filing cabinets, and then I currently have them lifted up off the filing cabinets, and I'm dealing with with some back pain, and so I'm trying a standing desk for a while, and I don't want to build anything that's a standing desk until I know that I enjoy doing that. So it's got its pluses and minuses, and on to the workshop. So this is the door that separates the workshop from my office. Right inside there, it is wintertime. You saw that I was in a t-shirt outside, and yet there was snow, and that is possible at points because of this beauty right here, which keeps my workshop warm. I also have forced air heat that is also a part of the workshop. But in the winter, I take advantage of all the scraps and stuff that I have to burn and everything. So next to that is my Veneer Press, and it is closed up right now, meaning just that I have the top layer on it. It's a plastic membrane that gets pulled down against the veneer. Actually, it's probably better called a vacuum press. The motor is down underneath the wood cart here, and because I also use it not just for veneer, but anytime 2 pieces of sheet good that need to get glued up, it is so much easier to do it right in there on the veneer, on the vacuum press. Moving down here, that is my chop saw station. I got a radial arm saw there for cutting larger pieces of wood. It's usually rough wood that I'm cutting on that. You'll see this flip down table here. This was my router table for probably 25 years. It was a long time that I used this as my router table. Originally it was a permanent on top on a permanent table. At some point I wanted more space, and so I decided to actually hinge it, and so it would get lifted up. Wood would get stuck. There's an angular piece of wood that would go down and hold that up, and then I could put the router into the slot there. And that worked for years. I keep it around because sometimes I still want additional horizontal space to put stuff on, or for things to dry, or to spread out. And so I will often use it for that. And then occasionally I do still use this as a second router table when I have 2 router table operations that I want to be doing at the same time. But that usually gets stored down there. So wood comes in, gets processed there. There is my router table that I use, my primary router table. It has a really, really nice insert called Jessam. I had never heard of them before. Lift, ROUT-R-lift. But it is a really, really nice mechanism for raising and lowering a bit. That just goes in and we go up and we go down. So that is a really, really sweet piece of workshop kit there. So, and then again, that's the table fence there that goes in there. This is the permanently hooked up shop vac to that router table. That is also the outfeed table for my table saw, a general table saw with a good parallel fence on there. So moving down this line, there's a spindle sander there, an oscillating spindle sander right next to an oscillating edge sander. The edge sander is a fairly recent addition. It's a Jet. It's about a little over $1,000, like $1,100, and it is a great introductory oscillating edge sander. I'd highly recommend it if you're thinking at all about getting in there. There are other versions of this by other makers. They're pretty much all the same, but this has been a really, really nice addition to the shop over the last year. Powermatic shaper. I actually have two shapers here. I've got a Powermatic shaper there, and then over here a Delta shaper. They're both, I think, 3 horsepower shapers. The Powermatic is the one that I got the feed set up on, so that's, I do all my long stuff on there. I like having 2 shapers because when I'm doing doors, I can set up both this rail and the style cutters at the same time. And so you can see here are some practice pieces for doors that I was working on there. This here is the most recent addition in terms of machinery to the shop. It is a Grizzly thickness sander, 15 inches wide. There's going to be a review. I had before that a power, what do they call it? Performax 1620 drum sander, and so I'm going to be doing a comparison of those two things before the Performax parts the shop there, which will be happening at some point. So I have my portable air compressor right now hooked up to the thickness sander. That's one of the things. This is being a new addition. It is not plumbed in yet. I have a 5-inch run. I need to run over to this. Currently I'm just using a 4-inch hose, and it really should be a 5-inch. It's not quite as good with the dust collection right now as I'd like, and so part of that will be rectified with that when that gets in there, and then I also need to run air over to it. This beast in the back here is a stroke sander. It's kind of largely buried, but it does get used. You can see the table here pulls out, and I think it's a 250-inch long belt there. This is an old machine from Jamestown, New York is where it was made. Curtis Machine Company is the name of it. But it was old. I had to make it did not have any paddle, so I've made a paddle, and that piece of plywood there, right there, is just meant to position that off of that back rail, so I'm not trying to hold this onto the belt. So that has worked really nice, although I do not use it nearly as much as I used to. I'm actually thinking about selling that so I can free up the space that it takes. Next to that is a S45 Minimax bandsaw. It's an 18-inch bandsaw, and it's been a great machine. I've had that for probably 30 years at this point, and it's been a great machine for that time. Still cuts. I've got Carter guides on it right there. I think we're going to be doing next week a review of Carter guides and putting them on a new machine for my brother-in-law. He's just purchased some Carter guides, and I think we're going to put those on together. Pretty standard floor model drill press right there. This is a table that I made for it a while back. It has been, this is one of those things where I put off for years and years making an upgrade for the table, and I'm so glad that I did this. It has just been so nice. I did a recent video about putting an insert into your drill press table, so you so that your sacrifice board here, your wood table, doesn't end up looking like Swiss cheese all the time. So in between that is my floor sweep area. All of my floor sweepings get pushed over here and get sucked up in there. I am blessed to have central dust collection here, and that's that guy back there. It is an Italian model. It's called Coral. I picked this up actually as a barter for a job that I was working on, and someone was moving shops at that point, and this was not going with him, and so I ended up bartering for that with a job that I was working with, and that's been a huge blessing just to have machines properly set up with a dust collector. That's a 5 horsepower model. Next to that is a Bridgewood hollow mortising machine. That is a heavy duty machine. Nice. They're out of business, of course, at this point, but that has been a really nice machine. It's hefty enough to easily do door mortises. Next to that, a Sandrite pneumatic sander, and I've got a pneumatic sanding wheel. I think this is a 6-inch wheel on this side, and then on that side there is a flap wheel, and that combo is what I use mainly because I make wooden spoons as gifts. I sell them sometimes, and so that's the machine that I use for that. That's another machine that I need to get better dust collection hooked up to right now, because it is not. So air compressor, everyone needs an air compressor, and that is mine. It is hooked up to, moving in there, for years I just had hose going around the shop. I did some research, and that is water pipe soldered together. I'm fairly proficient at soldering at this point in my life, and so I ended up just putting pipe in there. You'll see there, that tee up there is where I'll tee off and go over behind me to the thickness sander, which needs to have air, and then that just heads down the shop and goes into the spray booth down there, and I'll show you that setup down there pretty soon. So I have a grinder here. It is a slow, it's an 1800 RPM grinder, so I use that for obviously for sharpening stuff, and I have another grinder that's more of a high-speed brute grinder that I have in the garage there. Very nice jet lathe there. Very nice jet lathe. This is a Cadillac. This is actually, I've been blessed with this by someone else who's purchased it and is storing it here at this shop, and so but it is just so nice having an RPM where you know what the RPMs are, and it's just a Cadillac. It's solid and everything else. Down below that, I call this my machine cabinet. I built these drawers for it 4 or 5 years ago when I had built a Wendell Mathias finger joint jig, and it worked really well. So at that point I retrofitted this cabinet, which didn't used to have any drawers in it. It was just kind of open space and stuff was thrown in there. And so you can see I've got all kinds of stuff there in terms of machine maintenance and odds and ends of things. So it gives that a place to be. So it's been a good thing. This is my sliding table saw. It is a SCM they call it an SI12 is the actual name. It's a 12-inch table saw. It is a nice sliding table saw, panel saw, if you will. It only has about a 63-inch travel on it. That's the only limitation. So when I'm doing 8-foot panels, I still have to come up with, or rather use one of the factory edges as that straight edge if I need to cut a full 8-foot. But other than that, this has been a great thing. It's large enough to do a 5x5 sheet of Baltic birch on it, and there has been a lot of Baltic birch processed on this over the years. Machine cabinet next to that, which I store all my sanding paper in there as well. That opens up, and I say a machine, it's a tool cabinet. So a lot of my tools are stored in there. My rags, there's a little rag box right there. Up here you see sandpaper rack, and then all my odds and ends of sandpaper get stuck there. And it just ends up being an odds and ends cabinet sometime, and it needs to kind of be redone at some point, but time is limited. So it'll probably be a long time. This is where I store many of my saw blades. I'll show you another addition I made where more of them are actually stored at this point. All right, here in the middle of the workshop, we have a couple things. The first thing is the planer that I have. It's a Powermatic 15-inch planer. They're fairly common. There's many different makes that they have to use the exact same molds over in China where they're turning these things out, or Taiwan or wherever it was made. But it's been a great 15-inch planer. I actually bought a spiral cutter head for this from Lux, and we'll be doing a installation video on that at some point fairly soon. It just actually arrived 2 days ago, and it came over in the van with me today, and I haven't even gotten it into the workshop yet. So this is my joiner. It's actually a joiner planer combo machine. It was the first one of the first machines that I bought. And it's a joiner planer combo that I have set up permanently as a joiner. It is nice. It's 13.5 inches wide. It is nice to have that wide joiner capability in a workshop. But one of the things that I never really loved about it was for doing longer pieces of wood, the length of the bed was just not long enough. And so I put at some point these auxiliary tables on the two ends, and they actually come off. Maybe this is one hand. Let me come down here. I know this one's a little bit looser. So they actually come off like that, and so it's easy to take it down and then have the extra floor space, because they do kind of displace some floor space. But you can set those off to the side, and then you have the original joiner length, which is still very sufficient as a joiner. So that is here in the middle of the workshop. It's got dust collection coming down from the ceiling there. And then one more part of my workshop that I would never, ever be without is a good cart. There are decent wheels on the bottom of this cart. It rolls really easy, and it just allows me to move stuff around the workshop while I'm working on it. So if I'm milling something up, this cart will be with me over at the radial arm saw, where I'm just cutting stuff to length. Everything goes on the cart and then gets pushed over here, and we're able to put stuff through the joiner and flatten the side and put an edge, and then we're able to roll it around, and we're able to sit it right next to the planer and do all the planing there. If I have to go back by the joiner, everything just gets rolled over by the joiner. When things need to get ripped on the table saw, the cart gets rolled right down here, and all of a sudden I'm ripping stuff on the table saw. And so I would not be without a good cart in the workshop. Even for a small workshop, it keeps you from having to lug things around from surface to surface. And you can also, like if I'm sitting here right at the joiner, I'm gonna actually move this over so I can show you what I mean here, because this is part of the process of building that we don't always talk about, but oh my gosh, it saves so much time. So when I'm at the joiner and I'm working here, literally right here is where the wood is that I'm jointing, if it's more than one or two pieces, and I'll joint it, or I'll surface it, and then it just goes right there, and I haven't even taken a step, and I've got the next piece, and I'm doing that to that, and back over there, get the next piece, boom, boom, back over there. And so I haven't had to move at all in order to do the work that I needed to do. And so that can be a huge time saver. I also have this converted into a downdraft table that I'll hook up a hose, a 4-inch hose to this, and through this pegboard. And that has been a huge time saver, or not time saver, lung saver. It just is, it's good about just recovering a little bit more of that dust from hand sanding and stuff. Speaking of sanding, that is my dust extractor. It's a Makita dust extractor hooked up to a, right down there, a Bosch random orbital sander, and that has been a nice setup. That's the primary tool that my the dust extractor gets used with, and so that just gets tucked back in here and I can easily just pull it out and use it. I did a little review on this vise. It is a vise that is connected to a portable base right there, and that's where that sits, so that I can pull that out and when I'm cutting metal and stuff and put it right over there in the workbench. So next to that, I've got, this is where I store a couple of my cabinets for small parts and screws, and so I've got those set up there, and running out of space, but it is good to know where stuff is when you need it. Down here is my sharpening station. I sharpen with water stones at this point, and this is where I do all my charging of drills and everything. Speaking of drills, these are all my drill. That's all my drill bits and stuff get stored there, so I know where they're at. My domino and a couple other festool things there. Odds and ends of tools. And the bench jack just gets pushed over out of the way here when I'm not using it against the workbench here. This is my workbench, and I built this, life moves quickly, man. 30 years ago I built this. I think I was 20 when I did that, and I am not 20 anymore. You can do the math. So, but it has served extremely well. A fairly hefty end vise there, which actually has underneath here, you can kind of see there's a dual sliding mechanism there, and so that does pretty well for staying parallel. They have better things. I think I would have probably gone with the 2-screw mechanism in terms of keeping it parallel, but this has worked pretty well. A nice record side vise there. I put a couple hold downs there in the middle. There are here, we've got bench dogs. So these are all just fairly simple custom made bench dogs with a little spring there. Wood. And that works well. The most used tools that I have in terms of power tools kind of get left underneath there. I do have power run over here to the bench. My tool cabinet desperately needs an upgrade at some point because I am out of space. Can you say that? You ever run out of space in your workshop? More screws, storage and everything there. I have, so this is my workbench on this side, and then right across the aisle here is another bench, and I kind of use this for a glue-up table. And again, there's just a lot of storage in terms of screws and hinges and casters, latches, everything. That's kind of where all that gets stored. In the middle there is an island kind of in the middle there behind. On the other side of this is where the router table is, and there's an island, and that's where all the clamps gets placed, so I can kind of access them from wherever I'm at in the shop doing a glue up. And it also gives a place for dust collection to come down in the middle of the shop there. And then we're back over to the table saw. Underneath the table saw here is a cabinet that I built that has been a great storage for everything table saw related. So got a few saw blades that I've collected over the years, and so everything you need in terms of the table saw is there. That is my storage for wood right there. At least it is some of it. So those are offcuts. I've got plywood storage there on the end, both 4x8 sheets and 5x5 sheets, and so that is kind of where that's at. Everything here is 4 foot deep. This is 4 foot deep. And then when you get to this area, this section is 3 foot deep. On the very end, it's 2 foot deep. And then for the extra space back there, there's a space for 8 foot tall sheets and offcuts that's 1 foot deep. And then next to that, 8 foot sheets of plywood that are 2 foot deep can get stored in there. So that is, that's that. And that's where the earmuffs get held. Moving around the shop, those 2 doors go into the spray booth. I'll go in there in just a second. I've got 2 speakers up there, and then a whole lot more storage for wood there. And I have a storage shed out back that also has some wood in it. So that is that. That was great before I had my storage shed up there, but it's enough of a pain to get wood up and down from up there that if it's the only place you have to store it, then it's great. But if you have a place where you don't have to be up on a ladder putting stuff into little cubby holes, and then it's just, you end up using the stuff that is down at floor level. So, all right, into the spray booth. I am very happy that I had done this spray booth when I built the shop. I was technically only allowed to call it a finish room during the inspection. It's got a 3-foot door and a 2-foot door, and that allows me to get wider things in there when I need to. It's usually just the 3-foot door that gets opened. And so there is you can see that it's gotten overspray and everything every place. This here is the fans, and it has filters before the fans there. There are filters on the door, as you saw coming in, so that filters out any sawdust when we're doing it, when we're spraying. It does it very well at keeping a dust-free environment. Finished cabinet, I went through here recently and got rid of stuff, and I need to do it again, but lacquers and stuff get stored in there. I put a system of these double shelf brackets for my drying rack in here, and it has been a blessing. I have a little 2-minute tip on that, but that's just been very nice in terms of setting stuff up. I have a little stand that moves around here that when I'm spraying, wherever I'm at, I can take this spray stand with me and I can move it, and so I can just hang the gun up when I'm spraying something. You spray it, you can just hang the gun up, and you don't have to take any steps away from the projects that you're working on, and that can be a time saver. More storage in here. This is my little mixing station, a 2-gallon pressure pot there that gets used whenever I'm doing spraying of any size. That's my air distribution. Remember the copper pipe? Well, that's the copper pipe coming in from the air compressor, and so that goes into the spray shop. One of those lines comes out here, and this is my little homemade. This was a fun project. I don't know if I do it again or not, because you can get these things fairly cheap, but I didn't have any money when I built this a couple years ago, and so I just said, I think it was a $20 part. That is the swivel part right here, and other than that, everything else was stuff that I had around the shop, and it was kind of fun. So it was definitely a fun building project. So this here, if your workshop is not close to where you're at and you have Wi-Fi, get one of these. So this hooks up to the internet, and I can turn on the heat from home. It doesn't matter when I come over. During the winter, I can turn on the heat from home. And so I can turn it down to 54 at night is usually what I leave it. And then when I come in, I can turn it on half an hour ahead of time. And it is warmed up when I get over here. So I don't have to wait for the wood stove to actually warm things up. This here is actually one of my wife's biggest blessings to me ever. When I was building the workshop, which I built here about 17, maybe it was a few more years than that, 17 to 20 years ago, somewhere in that time frame, we were building the workshop. I was feeling like I was spending money that we didn't have, and so we had this discussion about whether we should put plumbing out there, and she said, absolutely, you need to put plumbing out there and you need a toilet out there. So now that we are not living in the house here anymore, we rent the house next to the workshop, I am so thankful that my wife said, honey, spend the money and put water and a toilet in out there. So this has been an absolute blessing. Warm water is I think an essential in a workshop. And so if you don't have hot water coming to the workshop, then you end up having to warm it up, which actually with these new kettles that they have, I have one here for tea, would not be that bad of a deal in terms of heating up water, but I have a little 40-watt point source water heater. It doesn't create a high volume of hot water, but it's enough that you can wash your hands. It's enough that you can have warm water for cleaning up glue ups. It actually sits right back there. You can't quite see it. It sits behind the refrigerator, and have a little mini fridge so I can keep half and half cold and get my lunch in there especially during the summer when it's warm. The thing that keeps life moving in Todd Wolfe's world, coffee. So I've got a grinder and beans and coffee here and something to warm up the shop, or food in the shop with right there, microwave. I've got this little thing here. One of the things that I love in the workshop is music, and so that's a little Apple, what do they call it? Airport Express, and that allows me to send music over to this point, and then that gets plugged into this receiver, and so the speakers in the office are in tune or synced with the speakers out here, and that's been a real kind of treat, I guess you could say. Not a necessity at all, but I do like music when I'm working, and that has allowed me to have the same music going on in the office and out here, and so that's kind of nice. That's a little dust-free cabinet just to keep that the electronics from getting dusty. So toilet here, nothing big, it's a toilet, but again, very, it's a huge blessings. Thanks, Patty. Patty is my wife, and I probably don't thank her enough for the stuff. Clean up stuff in the shop. There. Out there is my garage, and you know what? I cleaned up. Company's here, right? Thanks for coming up. But one of the things that often happens in my world is that when I clean up for company, there's usually one room that doesn't look clean, because that's where you shoved everything that you wanted to get out of the way. And right now that's all in the garage, so we're not opening that door. Ladders, because I do have to get up places in the world. And so there it is, my workshop. I am absolutely blessed. I don't know what to say. I'm so thankful for the workshop that I have. Obviously, that has not come with a lot of work on my part, but also it came with a lot of blessings that other people gave me. I know my parents helped out back 20 years ago. They helped out with a small loan so that I could do the initial building of the workshop. I've had people who have come along and helped actually put the workshop together when I finally was able to bring the tools down here. I remember clearly having people being willing to have their tools stored here, and then I get to use them, and they use them whenever they come over, which is often not very much. But when I look around and I see everything that's here, I'm just grateful. So thank you for being a part of this. As you see the videos on machine reviews and tool reviews and everything, you'll be able to understand a little bit more in context of what you're looking at and where it is in the shop. But anyways, Todd Wolfe, Made by Wolfe. I'm blessed. I've got a place to work. You have a place to work too. I don't know what it is. If it's different than this, absolutely. But wherever that is, make sure you get there and you work and you make something today. Hey, thanks for joining me for the workshop tour. If you enjoyed this, please hit the like and subscribe buttons and come back to the channel and see more of the stuff we're doing. Most importantly, make sure that you take time yourself to get out there and make something today.